Hello and welcome back for one last stop to Peacemaker. And here's the thing, we're here for the season 2 finale, maybe the series finale of Peacemaker. Uh, Divisive episode from what I'm gathering, but it'll be fun to talk about it. It'll be fun to talk about how well or unwell it fulfills this whole season, what it sets up for DC, because I think it does do a lot of setting up for the DCU. But it'll be a fun conversation either way. And yeah, I'm here once again with Ari. I've been here with you for the whole entire season. So how are you feeling going in? Don't give your thoughts away just yet, but how are you feeling going into this finale after an up and down season overall? But we were both very, very, very high last week. So how are you feeling going in?
Yeah, it's weird to feel that it's already over. That went by pretty quick. But yeah, I am excited to talk about this. This will be an interesting conversation. We definitely will have things to talk about, whether it will be positive or negative.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, this is our last week here at Peacemaker, but it's not our last week on Here's the Thing. So if you want to see us covering all kinds of movies and TV shows, it's horror season right now. So we've got horror video games, horror TV shows, horror movies being reviewed on the channel. So check all that out. But outside of the horror realm, we're still going to be covering TV. We're still going to be covering all kinds of stuff in the media landscape. So if you're sad that Peacemaker is done, we're not that far away from Wonder Man in the MCU. We're not that far away from all kinds of the superhero genre is not going anywhere. So we'll still be around reviewing it. So keep with us through the small little gap here to the next DC entry. But yeah, let's start out with our general thoughts. I'll say my positives first, in that I thought parts of this episode were really genuinely very, very, very funny. Some of the hardest I've laughed in this whole series. I think Economos trying to riff and just being so terrible at it. She's like, "Oh, just go distract him," and all he has to do is go and talk to this guy, but he just has no idea how to do it. And I loved that scene. I really, really laughed at that. There was a couple of other really good jokes here and there when we go through the episode. We'll talk about it when we get to them. But I thought the humor, for the most part, worked this episode. And I also thought that it did genuinely give us a good amount of setup. Like James Gunn talked about this as like the prequel to Men of Tomorrow, and you must watch this for the reasons of DC. And it wasn't like, oh, it's a cameo, so you've got to watch it for the cameo. It was like, this actually does kind of set the stage for what the DC world's going to look like going forward, and it gives us a really good idea of where we might be building to in terms of comic book storylines that James Gunn's drawing from, and what characters might be coming in or coming out here and there from them. But those are the positives for me. Oh, other than that, I thought this thing was a pretty big mess. This felt like a whole half season in one episode. It really was kind of all over the place in terms of quality, and felt was really, really unsatisfying to me overall. By the end, there was just a lot of unresolved information, and James Gunn's like, "Oh, maybe this is the end of Peacemaker. Maybe it's the last season." And how could this be a series finale? If this is a series finale, it's terrible, right? Like, if this is a season finale, I can give it a pass for certain things. If this is your series finale, what are we doing here? But yeah, what are your thoughts, Ari?
I have to agree with you for the most part. I will say I did like the humor. I wouldn't say it was like one of the funniest episodes of the entire series, but there were great moments, especially with Economos. But overall, I don't have a lot of positively to say about this episode. I mean, there were good scenes. The problem is there are good moments. They don't feel earned. They feel like they either happened too quick or just happened out of nowhere. We can talk about specifics here and there, but overall, the episode just I've never seen something like this before. Where like you said, it could work as a season finale, as a series finale. If this is a series finale, this is like worse than like Lost or anything like that, because this is just does not feel like the end. It doesn't even fully feel like the end of a season. Like
No, this feels like a penultimate episode. If there was one more episode after this, if there was like a finale next week, I'd be like, I'm pretty hyped. Let's
yeah,
see how this works out. But
yeah, you're like
how is this the end?
oh, so Keith and the other hardcore, we'll see them again next episode. That wasn't for this one. Nope, just nowhere to be seen. And who knows what the future of that Earth X even is? Who knows if we will see them again anytime soon? Uh, I just do not understand how this episode came to be like this. You have moments that are great, but just feel unearned out of nowhere, like Tim Meadows joining the team. Where did that come? Well, we're not going to see that turn happen. It just
Yeah,
happened.
for me, a lot of the previous parts of this season, the biggest twists and the biggest reveals, they felt like they were motivated by the character. We really complimented James Gunn in the first week when he was tempted towards that multiverse, unraveling, and he didn't do it. He went to a multiverse that was very focused on what the character needed at that time for their arc. And this finale felt like for the first time they were not character motivated. They felt like they were plot motivated. They were trying to be, let's set this thing up, let's set up checkmate, let's set up this and that because we've got to get all these pieces together for the next plot point. And for the first time, I started feeling like, are we in MCU TV territory, right? When you think about some of the worst parts of the Marvel Cinematic Universe TV landscape, it's where they get caught up in trying to, especially in the finale, get every piece in the exact right spot for whatever movie is coming up next, rather than ending the series in a good spot. And this doesn't end the series in a good spot. But yeah, I'm excited to talk about it scene by scene because there is stuff to break down. But a big letdown for me, I won't lie. Especially when James Gunn has hyped this thing up like it's a movie level thing, and there are movie level sequences in terms of like the effects and the scale of the scenes, but in terms of actual like plot development and meaningful character arcs, it just didn't feel that cinematic. And I think they ultimately hurt themselves by building this thing up, saying like, "Oh, this is going to be the best thing ever made. This is going to be like the next movie within the DCU," and it was never going to be that. And then when it is this, it's even worse.
Even if he had hyped it up and said like, it's pretty good, but it's not my favorite work, it still would have been disappointing.
All right, let's get into this episode. We start with a flashback. 1 month ago, they're on sort of this date but not date type of thing where they're hanging out at the Big Belly Burger, which I believe is present throughout the DC comics. If you're a DC fan, that's a chain that shows up all over the place. He's gunning it about music, going on and on about one of his favorite bands. And there's an interesting moment here where he orders all these shots to the table. And I noted this because it felt like, are they trying to tell us that Chris might be a negative influence on Harcourt to an extent? Because she goes down after this point, goes down this really alcohol abusive, violent path. Is he, unbeknownst to, he's trying to do something that's just fun, trying to encourage his friend to have a good time, but is he encouraging her to drink to an excessive extent that she should not be drinking at? Is part of his positive energy ending up having a negative impact on people? That seems to be something that he's examining for himself in the episode, like the negative impacts of him trying to do the right thing. Are you there?
Oh yeah. I did not think about that. I honestly really like this sequence. I like seeing this flashback. I think my problem is it's a little too late.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like this should have happened maybe a few episodes, and they've been building up to this big boat thing, and it's specifically in this episode. It feels like they're setting up something to happen on that boat, and then we do see that. What I really liked about the sequence is I appreciate about James Gunn is whether you like the comedic scenes or not, he'll have some random person show up, and they'll feel like a real person. He like hugs her for some reason. I like seeing stuff like that in comic book stuff. I love when they just have a random person feel like a real person.
Do you think they intentionally put a bunch of non-white people in the restaurant so you know immediately this is not Earth X, this is the DCU?
Oh, oh, I did not. I did not realize that.
I thought it was funny for a second. I was like, "Oh, is this going to be a flashback to like how like evil Chris, met evil Harcourt?" And then immediately right behind them is like an entire row of nothing but like people of color. I was like, James Gunn definitely did that on purpose.
Yeah, I really liked. I'm glad this sequence existed. I'm just not sure if it needed to be this far into the season.
And we get the tease here of the Nelson cruise. We'll go back to that later, a
Yeah.
couple of times throughout the episode here. But flash forward to modern time now. We're sending teams through these Monsters Inc. doors. to various universes. It's kind of just a cool montage sequence. There's a allegedly funny scene here where Tim Meadows talks about going to a strip club with one of his cohorts here, and how the guy had a really intense time. Said a lot of lines I don't want to repeat myself, but I thought the scene was pretty funny. It does go on a little long, but that's James Gunn's thing. I thought this scene was all right, but yeah, like I said, it's typical James Gunn where it's funny for a little while, and then a couple minutes into it, you're like, oh, can we go to another scene now? Like, I kind of got the joke now,
Yeah, I get it. Can we chill with this? I was like, James Gunn does not have any chill, and it genuinely seems like he thinks anything sexual is just hilarious.
It
Like,
is kind of funny though that it's not funny, but it gives this guy some personality before he ends up being brutally killed, and then you feel a little bit worse for him, right? Because they just kind of gave him a bunch of shit and made fun of him, and then he ends up dying right afterwards, So they kind of end up feeling a little bit bad for what they just did, like it kind of has a reality check of like, oh, we were making fun of this guy, and then he ends up being dead. But that was a very cool door. They mentioned it was door 22. They go into this Candyland looking place with gumdrop buttons and big, sucker mushrooms and that kind of stuff. Looked like the Candyland from Elf a little bit. But they get attacked by these, I call them little goblin trolls, but you mentioned that they were actually imps.
they called them imps, yeah. Which is interesting.
Imps throughout the DCU so far.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of imps. They reference Batman in Peacemaker Season 1. There's a giant imp in Superman. They have mentioned them at the beginning of the season, I think, and then now we're seeing imps again. So it's interesting that James Gunn has this obsession. It makes me think, no question, will we see Batmite at some point in the DCU. But I did like that when they get shot in the face, they have that pixie dust fairy sound. That was very funny.
That was very funny. It was a very cool effect too with the imps, and the shot where I think it's Harcourt rips one of them in half and there's guts spilling everywhere. It was a practical effect. You can see the behind the scenes after the episode. They had actual blood, actual guts, like an actual imp you could rip in half. They had a bunch of really cool practical effect imps in that sequence. So I really appreciated what they did there.
They brought an actual imp on set to tear it in half.
There was also this black hole dimension they went into. We saw for a second the shot of those walking skeleton guys. I guess we'll talk about that here because we get sort of just essentially a montage of a lot of these universes. That was something that I think people are disappointed by because we were teased oh, you're going to see all these crazy doorways, and we even saw that shot of the skeletons walking around in the trailer, and it ends up being literally just that shot. So did you feel let down by the use of the multiverse in this episode overall?
I don't know. At this point of the season, I was just pretty checked out. I didn't even know what to expect. It was okay. It was okay, I guess. I guess it's maybe the least disappointing part of the episode. It just doesn't bother me that much. Yeah, it would have been nice to see more with that. You could have had a fun horror sequence with those spiders where they're trying. Maybe they get trapped in there, and they can't open the door for 10 minutes or something. But yeah, it was okay. Not I mean I like the fairy sequence, but we definitely could have gotten more.
Yeah, we got a decent amount here, but the multiverse just doesn't seem like it's working out on either side right now. So I'm kind of happy that we're getting out of this thing, to be honest with you. Let's get out of the multiverse saga on either end of this thing and just move on. There's a funny scene here where Adebayo comes to talk Vigilante into helping her get Peacemaker back, and she says, let's do this the right way. Let's take all this money that you've taken from these bad guys and just bail him out and help him get his help that he needs. And he said, let's not do that. Let's do a prison breaker, threaten the judge's family. Vigilante's totally willing to murder a judge's family, but he's not willing to spend some of the money he stole from the drug dealers. I thought that was a very funny scene. And Vigilante always has these very hard lines of morality that make him a really interesting character. He's not completely amoral. He has these interesting lines he just will not cross. That makes him, I think, a very, very funny character. What did you think of that scene?
Yeah, I really like that scene. I I really like the moment where I know it's later on, but where Vigilante just straight up like commits violence on Peacemaker.
Yeah,
That
because and then when Economos lets him leave, they're like, what do you want me to do? Tackle him?" And Vigilante's like, "Yes, tackle him." And then he shows it in his action. He's like, "Yeah, I'm gonna tackle him. I'm gonna tase him too."
Yeah, I like the idea. I love the idea that he's not okay with this spending the money, but he's like, oh no, I'll murder his entire family.
Yeah,
I'll
there's that.
literally I'll literally kill someone's family. Um,
There's a good line there from Adebayo where she says, "You can take something bad and make something good out of it." And I think that's ultimately like the core of what the show is: taking characters that seem like they're bad, seem like they've done something that's uncurable, unforgivable, and have them find some way to be good anyway, right? And that almost feels like James Gunn's mantra. He loves to take people and things that are shoved away from society and told to be bad and find a way to make them good. That was a line that I think is supposed to be very poignant and reflect a lot of what the season is going for.
oh, I really like the moment when she gets there and his mom is like, "Your friend is here," and he's like, "What fucking friend?" And he's such a douchebag, such a
It's
piece
terrible.
of garbage to his mom. And then Adebayo's like, "No, it's okay, Kamali. That's what my wife calls me." And then they have this maybe not necessary joke about lesbians in here, where I'm like, "Okay, James, what are we doing here?" This is. I'm not saying you can't joke about certain things, but this just feels like it's just necessary right here in this scene, and it wasn't particularly hilarious either.
I want to shout out in that multiverse montage coming up right after this, where, like we said, we got the black hole door, we got the screaming skulls and the zombies that seem like they're out of terrifying tales, like those super old style comic books before we all got unified into DC and Marvel. Uh, and in that montage, we get this really fun scene. I never heard this song before, but the chorus is like, "Please stop fucking my heart in the ass. Won't you stop fucking my heart in the ass? Please, please stop fucking my heart in the ass." Something along those lines. I was
Yeah,
very impressed by James Gunn's needle drops here.
as soon as they said, "Please stop fucking," "please stop fucking," I was like, "Oh, what?" But then the rest of the dialogue, and then I like later on, they're like, "Please stop, please stop," and I think that was me throughout the entire episode. I was just like, "What am I watching?" That was a great needle drop. I did really like that song.
It's a very Peacemaker song to pick, you know?
Yeah, it is. It does really fit with
I
Peacemaker.
could absolutely see Peacemaker jamming out to that song. And in this montage, you're also getting, oh, forgot the character's name, the cyborg woman that works for McFlag
Yeah,
Sr.
Sasha Bordeaux.
We're seeing her ultimately realize she's on the wrong side of the system and recognize that she can't just sit here and turn a blind eye. She has to stand up and fight the system. She's sort of opposing what we saw Augie in the previous universe say, like, "Look, I fight what's in front of me, but I don't actually fight the system around me." And she's saying, "Look, I am going to fight the system around me. I'm going to do what I can within my power to change the system, not just sit there and say it's beyond my power. I'm going to do something about it." So I think that was a pretty strong arc. I just wish there was more to that. Like, she turns so quickly, and a lot of this episode feels like it's unearned, and that feels like one of the somewhat unearned twists. Like, I
Yeah, it just
appreciate that she turns to the right side, but it's literally across one montage. We haven't really spent any time with this character beyond that where we would get this from her, right? She's been so cold and so distant. We haven't gotten anything from her until this episode, so it just doesn't feel super earned.
you wanted to do something, a big reveal like that, but you couldn't have any of the 35-minute episodes, maybe like 45 minutes, to give that some more room. Also, how is it that the government did not seize Adrian's money?
I did wonder about that because they were literally at his front door last week. Like, they didn't walk inside. Like, they didn't look to see what was inside the house. They could have at least. I guess they may have given him a pass. They were like, "Look, you helped us get Chris, so we're not going to take all of your money." But at one point, wouldn't Vigilante be like, "Please take the money. Like, I don't want this money," you know? But it gets us out of our situation, right? I feel like that blood money helps them get Peacemaker. So at least
What?
it was there and used.
Why is it that Eagly this whole season has had not a huge role? Like we had that episode, we had that great moment with all the other Eagles, which by the way, nothing regarding that. No revisiting that, so not sure. I guess he just has superpowers.
Yeah, I have a feeling that Eagly, a lot of those Eagly sequences, maybe even that whole character that the Eagly Hunter may have been like added late. Maybe they realized we don't really have anything with Eagly. We also have to maybe fill some time. So let's add some Eagly filler. And it's frustrating that we spent so. Ultimately, we'll talk about our overall thoughts later, but I think that a big problem with this season is time management, and it's shown in this last episode. A lot of these character arcs, Rick Flag becoming this radicalized like Musk bro, test, like I don't know, tech bro kind of guy.
Yeah,
Where
when
he's
did
really
that happen?
like that happened over the course of the season, but we haven't really seen that. Like this doesn't feel like the character we saw in Creature Commandos. This doesn't feel like the character we saw in Superman. I don't get this character's arc, and it's because we didn't spend time with them.
Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna exactly handle him in Creature Commando season 2, because imagine if you watched that show but didn't watch Peacemaker or even Superman, or didn't know that was him in Superman, and then you watch that, like, wait, what's going on? Wait, what happened with him? You're gonna be pretty confused.
We get the reveal here that their ultimate plan is a prison universe, or at least that's what Rick Flag has been told. They're trying to make a prison for what he says is just metahumans. Well, maybe, most likely. He kind of is vague on answering that question, but it sounds like it's going to be mostly metahumans, but maybe anybody who questions Argus or stands up to Luthor is going to be locked away, not in a prison, not in Arkham, not in Belle Reve, because those are unreliable. People break out of those all the time. We're going to send them to this prison universe. I believe they actually do call it Salvation in the episode. So we'll talk about that towards the end of the episode. But yeah, what did you think of the ultimate reveal? Were you satisfied at all by this reveal, or what?
I I was just like, oh, so we're not doing Earth X. We're doing something completely different that was not necessarily. So, no, it would have been one thing if Earth X was something that had proper build up and setup and payoff, and then ended, but it didn't end. They left things open. It seemed like they were setting up maybe Keith to be a main villain in the future, but we're not revisiting. Like, they could have had scenes this episode where we revisited Keith and that hardcore and sort of gave it closure, and then say that's that door closed. Now we're moving on to the next thing. But they didn't. They left that open. We did not revisit getting a closure with that, which is just basic storytelling. Uh, it's a fun twist. I just feel like it can't have a lot of really fun with it when there's not proper build up.
Yeah, I mentioned that this is based on the Salvation run. James Gunn himself has said that this is one of his inspirations for the DC universe. Excuse me, this is created off a pitch from George R. R. Martin. So if you're a Game of Thrones fan, this is something that he was somewhat
Oh,
involved in the premise of. Uh, it's in response to like a big explosion of metahumans, similar to what we've been seeing in Superman. There's this big crackdown from the government on metahumans, and all these different villains and anti-heroes are all captured by the government and sent to this distant planet to live far away from society. And once they're in that planet, these villains form various gangs and groups of allegiances. Some of them want to escape, some of them want to take over the planet and be like, gods of this villain world. So we may end up seeing all of these various villains and metahumans sent to this planet after Peacemaker, and we'll maybe pick up a couple of years later and see, like, is there a gang that Peacemaker is a leader of? Has he regressed and become totally back to his evil self because of this? I wonder where we'll come back to this other universe here. But yeah, it seems like what they're drawing from this Salvation run, and I believe they call it Salvation multiple times in the episode itself, which is showing their sign here.
I don't know if it was Salvation Run, but I saw there was a storyline people thought it might be drawing off of, where there's like an actual dinosaur island.
Yeah, I was looking up Dinosaur Island because you hear some dinosaurs at the end of that. I was waiting for a T-Rex or something to walk around, but there is a Dinosaur Island. I was looking into that.
Peacemaker riding a T-Rex.
Tell me that wouldn't be amazing. Minute tomorrow, like you cut to Peacemaker riding out on like a raptor or something.
I'd
That would be
imagine
amazing.
that awesome like James Gunn shot from the front of his face, the T-Rex's face, and then his face. But yeah, it's a fun reveal. It's just I can only get that much excited for something if there wasn't proper build up.
Something that someone has had proper build up is the romance between Chris and Harcourt, and finally get that flashback of their boat scene, and this extensive cameo from the band, the rock duo Nelson. We see their entire song performed essentially from beginning to end. We see uh, Jennifer Holland do like wine drunk white lady dancing at like a wedding. I'm pretty sure I've seen my aunt dance like that a lot. And then at the culmination of the song, they have a big passionate kiss on the dance floor, and it clearly means something to both of them. But Harcourt can't take it; she storms off, and this is the moment that has been haunting both of them throughout the season. Is this big kiss that meant something to both of them? And Chris is ready to admit it. He's saying, "Look, this was amazing. Let's pursue this," and she's not. So how'd you feel about finally getting to find out what happened on this boat here after eventually getting through that Hanson song?
Well,
Hanson, Nelson.
see, now getting through that musical performance is maybe one of the most difficult tasks of my entire life. I've watched a lot of media, a lot of shows, a lot of films, but that was legitimately painful. And I love the song. I love the theme song. I've grown to love it. I wasn't in love with it at the beginning. I
Well, we
was like,
haven't
give
even
me
gotten to
season.
the theme song one yet. We're still at the previous musical
Oh,
number. But
oh,
yeah,
uh oh,
I appreciate your
uh
comments
oh,
there.
oh, oops.
There is not one but two
Yeah,
extensive musical numbers in the same
it,
place.
I guess they kind of meld together, but it was a good song. I can't even remember the song right now, but it was good. But in terms of that, I'm glad we finally saw it, and I'm glad that it happened. But the way it happened, and then it it was good. I just feel like I don't know if it needed to happen in the finale per se.
Yeah, I think it comes back to that pacing problem of this season where this probably should have been the end of like last episode or even the one before that. Like we should have gotten this a little bit earlier, and it feels like this episode is trying to do like 3 or 4 episodes worth of plot at the same time. And I think that's been a problem with the hardcore development, is she's been kind of at the same spot almost this entire season, right? And I think part of it is because we haven't been able to see this moment yet. But I their kiss scene is kind of great. Like the lights go up, the music hits the peak all at the right time. It feels like James Gunn's dream version of like meeting his wife. I'd be very curious to find out like they meet at a concert or something like that. But uh, I like their kiss scene. Let's see where we're at now. Nelson cameo. I had to write that one down. Never heard of Nelson before. I'll have
Bull
to look those
Nelson is
guys
the
up.
name of the finale.
We go from that to what I thought was a very mature breakup scene where they say, look, it's not that I don't love you. It's not that something went wrong. It's that we want different lives. If you went down your perfect road and had your perfect life, I would be miserable. If I went down my perfect road, had my perfect life, you'd be miserable. So let's just not try and find the middle ground. Let's let each person be happy. So I thought this was actually a pretty good breakup scene. There was no screaming. There was no throwing stuff. There was nobody cheated on anybody else. It was just people saying, look, we can't work this out together, and let's just live different lives. So what do you think about them bringing this girlfriend back and having them finally resolve this plot line in what I thought was a pretty satisfying way? But what did you think?
Yeah, I really liked this scene. I thought the performances were both very good and felt very real, especially Adebayo, which maybe hasn't had the most to do this season, but I thought she was really good in this season. I mean, I like to see her show what she can do because she's an Oscar nominated actress for a reason.
Yeah, and I wonder if we'll see more of her again. They keep talking about that she's going to Gotham, going to Gotham, going to Gotham. That feels like we're going to see her at some point again. Whether it's an Arkham Asylum thing, whether it's in some Batman project in the future, anything like that, I feel like we're going to see that actress again.
Well, she definitely show up if they did another season of this.
Yeah, let's hope they do. Because then they get to Economos. Now we've had Economos is told, hey, go distract him for a second, and he is not good at that. He's saying and saying and saying lots and lots of things, but terrible at distracting them.
I thought the scene was pretty great and very, very funny. Maybe the funniest he's ever been.
Yeah, I thought it was an amazing scene, and it's one of those scenes where you can tell he improvised it, but he was nailing so many good lines. They just had to keep on going along with it, right? And they do that a lot in this show. It seems like where they just kind of let the actors go, and a lot of the times they save the rant for the post-credit scene, and they do give more of this in the post-credit scene. But it's funny that he definitely nailed the comedy in this sequence. What was the line he said? Like a joke. A lobster walks into a bar and the bartender says, "What the fuck?"
What the fuck? What are you doing here? You're not supposed to be. I loved when Otis was like, "Fuck you." There's not a football game, and then he's just like, "No, shut the fuck up. I wasn't talking to you, cunt."
Jeez. And then we get a scene after that where Adebayo gives this very emotional pep talk to Chris to try and win him back. I had mixed feelings on this to an extent because I think she's right in that Chris needs to be open to himself and that a lot of what happened to him is because he wasn't open to himself. But I also think that she's not wanting to accept the responsibility that her and her team played in just killing Keith and Augie last episode. She's like, "Oh, it's your fault, Chris, for getting us in that situation in the first place." And it is, but I also feel like it's their fault for just storming the gates and killing them with not even thinking about it. Like, isn't that what the point of the scene was? Like, it wasn't just that Chris got them in a bad spot. It was that they just rushed them and killed them and didn't think about it. So it made me wonder if they just maybe we were applying something that wasn't there the last week's episode and it wasn't as complicated as we thought it was. But yeah, what do you think about Adebayo tearfully trying to win Chris back and saying, like, "Look, you give my life meaning, you give all of us a meaning, you connect us. We all are connected to each other and to you."
Yeah, I did like this scene, and again, John Cena just giving a really good performance, and I thought she was really good in this scene too. Yeah, it was. I don't really have a lot to say about this scene in particular.
Yeah. Well, we can move on to a scene that is one that I think is probably my least favorite part of the episode, which is that he says he finally confronts Hardcore and says, "Look, tell me if it meant something to you. Tell me if this kiss meant something to you." And she finally confesses and breaks and says, "Of course it meant something to me. It meant everything." And she is great in that performance. That close-up shot of her face breaking for just like a 1 second is really great acting. And I love Chris dancing in the hotel right afterwards to the opening sequence. Really happy to have it happen. But then it cuts to literally a week later and they're just together on a date at the band Foxy Shazam is performing the opening sequence live, and they're just on a date. And I feel like that's a very quick turnaround. Like, she goes from barely wanting to confess that she cares to a week later being on a date, dancing and singing with them. And that just, to me, one of those twists here, that not a twist, but just a character moment that felt unearned because we just didn't get there. How do we get there in literally one cut?
I think art is subjective, but this is almost like how do you say this is good? Like, how do you say that's good storytelling? Like, that's just straight up bad writing. You're here, you're setting up, oh, maybe this will happen, and then you just cut to it happened.
Yeah, there's no build up, and it doesn't feel earned at all. Like, we should have spent more time with them in that will they won't they stage. We didn't really spend time with them together much this season, really. Like, they were separate through a lot of this season, and this is kind of the result of a rush finale. I think this could have been something that was built out over a few episodes, but instead it had to come just for the finale.
Yeah, I can't say I was a fan with that. It just feels very unearned. It just happened. You don't get to see any of that, and you can do that sometimes. You can do time jumps and we're in a different place, but this did not work.
Hunter is chiming in saying, "What are our thoughts on Salvation, DC run, and Checkmate?" We talked a bit about Salvation, but I'll bring it up again later on once you get through the episode. I have actually extensive thoughts about Salvation and Checkmate and a lot of comic books that I think he's going to be drawing from. But we're nearly at the end here of this season. It's cool to see Foxy Shazam, I guess, but not for a whole entire performance. I don't know if we needed that. I don't know if we
No,
needed
we did
two.
not need
Like,
to see
we could
that.
have just condensed both of these down to like just one performance from one artist, and we didn't need two. But yeah,
So
what are we doing? What are we
So
doing here?
who is the big cameo? Is Foxy Shazam the big cameo? Is Otis the big cameo? It's got to be Foxy Shazam. James Gunn said at like an event like a few weeks ago, he said Foxy Shazam is objectively the greatest rock band of all time. He's such a big fan. He's there. That was the big cameo. I guess to him, that was the big cameo.
And there was some behind the scenes footage of this performance posted right after the premiere episode aired, so I was kind of getting a sense that they were going to show up. But yeah, I guess that's the big cameo is Foxy Shazam is showing here. And in this sequence, we get the reveal that there is an. Okay, let's start here. There's 3 new additions to the team, 3 new faces. We got Tim Meadows, we've got Judo Master, and we've got the cyborg who has turned coat against Frank
Yeah,
Grillo.
Sasha Bordeaux.
So, what do you think about this new lineup? Did you feel like this is going to be a fun team to see more of, and do you think these people make sense to be together?
Yeah, it's I don't dislike it. It just happens. Like we just jump to that, which again I'm not really a fan of. I would have liked to see their turn. I would have liked to see a great scene where Tim Meadows decides, no, I'm done. I'm not. I don't agree with this. I don't agree with what you're doing. But no, they just skip past that. We don't get to see that. I mean, we would see for Sasha Bordeaux. We don't see
Mm-hmm.
for him or for Judo Master. Judo Master is like no lines this episode. That's something I was definitely disappointed with.
It does call back to, of course, last week Judo Master had a bonding experience with the team, but also Tim Meadows' character when he noticed that Economos was leaking that information and getting Peacemaker arrested and protecting him, he said, "You know what, you're doing a good thing here." And we pointed out that moment of maybe this is him realizing that like I'm on the wrong side here. And I guess it was. That seems like it was the beginning turn of him coming to this gang here.
Yeah, but
I want
we
to mention that they walk out, and the reveal is that this group is called Checkmate, which is a callback to the comics. Checkmate is a group kind of similar to the Suicide Squad. It's one of those kind of non-government organizations that's a collage of superpowered characters and metahumans, and it ties into a plot line that I feel like James Gunn is drawing from here called the Janus Directive, which is this late 80s crossover event where various organizations, both government groups and non-government groups, collide for power. And in this storyline, it's at the manipulation of Amanda Waller, who's going towards what she calls the Janus Directive, her ultimate goal for power. And she's manipulating these groups to try and get herself to be in control of everything. And my reading of this is that maybe James Gunn, for one reason or another, couldn't get Amanda Waller, or doesn't want to use her right now or something, and has swapped her in for Rick Flag Sr., who seems to be doing that right now, manipulating his way to have all these, or maybe even Lex Luthor to an extent, manipulating all of these different groups to be in conflict so that once they, can climb that ladder of chaos, as Littlefinger says, and take control themselves. But I'm excited to see them play it out because Checkmate is super underutilized, not a highly popular group, but is one of the many various groups. And for a while, a Checkmate spinoff series was in rumors along with the Amanda Waller series. So I kind of wonder if this Waller show and this Checkmate show could end up being like a same one thing. What if the Waller show picks this up?
Was this Checkmate show rumored under? It was rumored under the DCU, right?
Yes, it was. One of the earliest rumors when James Gunn took over was that he was going to be drawing from Checkmate and doing it after the Amanda Waller show.
If they combined those, then would Amanda Waller be involved with the team?
I would think so, assuming that Viola Davis wants to come back. I'm starting to wonder if Frank Grillo is the new Viola Davis, and she's just like not super interested in coming back for this franchise. But I'd love to see her come back, and having it be revealed as being Checkmate makes me really excited, hopeful that she will come back because I would love to see her come back.
Well, even if she didn't come back, it wouldn't really make sense for Frank Grillo to be involved with Checkmate.
No. But he could kind of be manipulating them behind the scenes, giving them false information or something along those lines.
I wanted to mention that in that scene with Rick Flag where he's in front of the presentation telling him about this other world, his mannerisms, it almost looked like he was mimicking Nicholas Holt's performance as Lex Luthor,
That'd
which
be
I thought was
interesting. That'd
which
be
I
a great
thought
touch.
which I thought was and I'm like, are they what like you had the Clayface theory, but why would he be having mannerisms of Lex Luthor?
I feel like it's a way to show that he's been Luther pilled, right? Like he's picking up his mannerisms the same way like a Elon Musk fanboy starts talking like Elon Musk, or like a Trump fanboy starts talking like Trump. He's a Luther fanboy, right? He's picking up his language, he's picking up his mannerisms, starting to become no better than Lex Luthor. At first he was like, I'm just using him because we have the same ends. Now he's basically just Lex Luthor,
It
right?
would have nice to have seen a slow build to that, like hints. I mean, we kind of did, but not really. He just met with Lex Luthor like 2 episodes ago.
Yeah, this arc has been kind of interesting. We've seen over the course of this season, he's really been caught up in the revenge scheme, saving his, he's telling himself, oh, it's about the country. It's about, what's best for protecting the citizens of the United States. It's about my job. But then in his final moments, he reveals it's not about any of that, really. It's just about revenge for my son, right? We can talk about that last scene. It's not a long scene, but it, Peacemaker's wonderful date and great life is not long for this world because he's grabbed the knight, taken away, and thrown into this prison dimension, as was set up earlier in the episode. He is the first prisoner to be locked up in the Salvation lands, and he's standing there, jaw dropped, totally kind of bewildered, betrayed by Frank Grillo. I keep calling him Frank Grillo. I can't know he has a real name. Rick Flag Sr.
Yeah, Rick Flag Sr.
And in that moment, he says, "It's for my son." And that, to me, is the full completion of this arc. He reveals in that moment it was never about protecting anyone. It was never about the United States. It was purely a revenge scheme, right? And now in that last shot, he hears roaring. He hears some kind of monsters out there. So who knows what's going to be picked up next? But he's the first of seemingly many to be thrown into the Salvation lands.
And sure, it is a completion of his arc, but I don't necessarily think it's a well executed arc necessarily.
No. I'm sure we'll see more of him, but
Well, yeah, definitely. I mean, he'll be a main. I mean, he might technically be the main antagonist of Man of Tomorrow
yeah,
because we thought he was going to team up with Lex Luthor, but he might end up throwing Lex Luthor in there.
yeah. I wonder if that's gonna be what ultimately teams up Superman and Lex Luthor. Do they both end up in this Salvation? Even Superman could be stuck there, right? If they declare Superman to be, an enemy of the state, they could find a way to get him in there. Maybe they got to team up to get out, right? We talk about how in that Salvation run, there's this kind of explosion of different gangs and different allegiances. Maybe we can see Superman and Lex Luthor end up being in a shaky allegiance, saying, look, we don't like each other, but we've got to get out of this thing.
Could
And
they introduce DCU non Robert Pattinson Batman in Man of Tomorrow in that world?
they could, and maybe it could be a thing where Batman is one of the few that's left, right? He's not a metahuman, so he gets to stay. He's not superpowered. He's just some guy, and he's one of the last remaining. But,
That'd be such a badass, awesome way to introduce Batman. All these little people, literal superpowers, being brutally murdered by dinosaurs and unknown creatures, and then Batman just hiding in the shadows, and he's fine.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know about that. We'll see. But I think this gives us a decent idea of what James Gunn's DC is going to be going for. We're not going to be getting big, huge cameos. We're not going to be getting really expensive or extensive crossover events, at least not right now, right? And this was hyped up as like the next big step in the DC universe, and it was to an extent. It gave us a lot of stage setting for what's going to happen next. It really did, I think, give us an idea for what Superman's going to be doing in terms of the conflict between Salvation and this DCU, and then there's also this budding Earth X that I'm sure is going to show up at some point. Again, it's going to end up being like a three-way battle where
So,
we have
so you
three
do
competing
think,
worlds.
so you do think Earth X will play into Man of Tomorrow?
I think it will. I think whether it's either Man of Tomorrow or the DC universe in general, right? Like, I don't think this is just setting up Man of Tomorrow. I think this is setting the stage for the Gods and Monsters era of the DCU. So I think a lot of this stuff will come back in Superman, but it'll come back in whatever the next step of DC is. I think in 10 years, we're going to come back and watch this and say, oh, things are set up here that we weren't even expecting.
When James Gunn said that the ending, that the Peacemaker season 2 finale is what he pitched to David Zaslav when he started the DCU, now, as maybe bad as we think the episode is, I think it makes sense in terms of the ending. Look at what this sets up. This sets up a huge, kind of is a big crossover event. All these different villains and characters on this one world, and I can see why that made David Zaslav interested. Like, hell yeah, let's do this. All these different, and it's a great way to introduce all these like Flash villains, Batman villains. You know, I think that would be a good way to maybe start to introduce Flash. Have some Flash villains be there.
Yeah, I think this is a great way to bring in what James Gunn loves, those deep cut C and D and B tier characters that you've never really heard of, or you've seen in like one issue somewhere, you barely remember who they are. You got a lot of that in just this one season of him grabbing random characters you can barely remember existing. And I think that could be part of his pitch. He says, look, you can have multiple like groups like the boys all existing in the one universe at one time, and they all have different motives and all have different styles and tones, and they're all competing for control. I think that's a really fun setup. And you throw in that Nazi universe and you have a really, intense modern commentary to bring to it too, which I think is definitely intentional. I wonder if that was part of the pitch or if that was something that was kind of added on, because one of my theories coming out of this episode was that maybe all the Earth X stuff was something that he added on to into the story, where it almost feels like that stuff didn't need to be here. And there was all of his story with Rick Flag, all of his stuff in the DCU that feels like what the story was going to be. And then James Gunn had this idea of, what about Earth X? Especially he might have been watching the news and seeing what the state of the world and wanted to say something about it. So he kind of reworked his story to work in a little more time in Earth X that he wasn't originally planning to do, because it just feels to me like two different seasons trying to both exist at the same time, and neither one of them is like fully realized here.
And the thing is, if Keith actually had died last episode, I'd still want to see, conclusion with what happens with Harcourt and how are they dealing with this. I would have less of an issue with it, because when you leave him alive like that, you're intentionally teasing that he will be back in some way, whether it's in Peacemaker or Superman.
Yeah, the actor said that, for Keith, his actor said that this is like the origin story of a supervillain. This is the ultimate origin story. And what? Yeah. Like, we had two villains essentially being built up across this season. There was the Rick Flag senior villain, and there was the Keith villain. And last week I thought the twist was, oh, Keith is the actual villain. But I guess not. I guess we're just going to abandon that character and go with what was seemingly the story in the first place of Rick Flag Sr. being the villain. So
or maybe they want us
back to the original plot here.
Or maybe they're trying to do the thing to make us forget about him, and so then he comes back a little later on. But yeah, it definitely feels like they're setting him up at the end of that episode. Otherwise, why are you leaving him alive?
And I have a feeling he'll show up either in the Salvation arc they're pulling off here, or maybe in Man of Tomorrow. Like I said, if they get attacked by Nazi universe, maybe that's the thing that inspires Argus or Checkmate or any of these groups to go to the Salvation and get these questionable characters, because look, it's either get them or being taken over by actual Nazis, right? So I can see that working in. But yeah, to me, the Superman setup here is Checkmate, and it's the Salvation prison planet here. I'm sure by the time we get to Superman, maybe it's a year later, and there's a lot more people on this planet, and what are we going to see? Like I said earlier, is Peacemaker going to regress back to being his totally evil, totally vile self, because he hasn't had his friends there? He's been living literally on the run. What is he going to be like now?
Yeah, and this would be a great way to introduce someone like the Flash. The Flash gets sent here, because it's not just going to be villains; it's going to be superheroes too.
Mm-hmm.
Superman, maybe the Flash. So we'll see. I think pretty hard to predict. Anyone could show up, but I'd like to see some of the smaller characters. Yeah, like Plastic Man. Introduce Plastic Man on this Earth. That'd be great.
And this is I think a great spot too, because James Gunn clearly likes to have some level of political commentary in his films, and when you talk about people being captured for no reason other than who they are and put into a prison against their will and just, because we don't want to deal with you. It's not because you're really a giant threat. We just don't want to deal with you. That feels very timely.
Oh, and I would like to mention that with the ending of the episode where he's even got Lex Luthor's crew in a government meeting,
Mm-hmm.
they're absolutely setting up the Lex Luthor president storyline.
We got a comment here from Mimicology saying not a lot of action in the finale, but I think it set up a lot of cool stuff for the future. Definitely excited. Yeah, I'm very excited for what it sets up. I'm disappointed by certain elements in terms of this actually as a finale to a season, but it does get me excited for what's next. And I think if it's a bumpy road getting things started, I hope it's uphill from here because this was an okay season. I'm gonna look back on this season. It's hard not to say disappointed because there were heights here and there, good episodes here and there, but overall, a pretty big mess. And I think this finale ends up summarizing a lot of my problems with this season as a whole, where it just feels unearned. It feels like a lot of different storylines trying to go on at the same time, and none of them are super well developed. And I think this thing just had to get another pass. Focus on Rick Flag or focus on Earth X. Don't try and do both and then kind of abandon both of them halfway through, right? And yeah, you mentioned that they set up the fact that they're literally half of them are working for Luthor and they're talking to Luthor people with the Secretary of Defense or Secretary of State or whoever it was. They're definitely setting that up, and they're setting up the fact that even from prison, Lex Luthor is doing whatever he wants, right? He's controlling the government, he's controlling Argus. He doesn't need to be out there. He can sit there like the Joker does in Dark Knight and say, I was with you guys, I was sitting here in prison while running my whole organization. I'm very excited though. What is our next DC project? Lanterns. We did not get any lanterns set up. I was expecting maybe a cameo from one of the 3 or 4 lanterns that might be in that thing, but no lanterns, no Mr. Terrific, no Justice League, no Daily Planet characters, nothing like that in here. Just a finale.
I think you meant to say Justice Gang. You said Justice League.
Oh, Justice League. Never heard of them. It's
because remember, they're not the same thing.
No, you're right. It's a totally different universe, guys. It's not the same universe.
In terms of comic book adaptations, the only thing we have left this year is Wonder Man, December 15th. So it's Wonder Man, and then early next year is Lanterns, and then Supergirl, and then Clayface.
I'm really curious about Lanterns because this was such a James Gunn show. Especially this episode was just like the most James Gunn thing you could ever see. Rock performances and jokes galore. I don't expect Lanterns to be like that.
No.
I expect Lanterns to be the first entry in the DC universe that is truly not a James Gunn entry. The first thing that really feels different, because this does feel different from Superman, but not significantly so. The tone is different, but the style is basically the same. I am very, very excited because Lanterns will give us a good idea of what this DC universe actually is going to look like. We have a comment as well from Mimi saying, I'm hoping Peacemaker was a setup for full-on movies or series like Deceased, or maybe an Earth X movie, possibly setting the Creature Commandos on Earth X or something like that, as Peacemaker being the opportunity to start all these storylines. I know this is what really warmed me about the episode. It lands you in a place where you feel like there's all kinds of ways that could path off from here, right? And if you want to reform a Suicide Squad, maybe Amanda Waller goes to that other planet and says, look, I'll let you guys come and do a mission for me if you want to get off the planet. And maybe that's an opportunity to get Chris or any of the other characters out of that area and back to our Earth for a little while. Yeah, Earth X movie would be awesome. I'd love to see more of Earth X. I really hope this is not the end for Earth X because it was so compelling. And once they established those characters as being more than you thought they were, I was very excited. I wanted to see more.
Yeah, when it started to get really interesting, that's when it was over.
That's unfortunate how I feel about the season, right? Like, they had a lot of great stuff going on, and then they kind of just ended it.
And that's just it, yeah.
I love especially because James Gunn hasn't even talked about it season 3. I hope we get actual news about that because it feels strange. And he said, "Oh, wait till you see how it ends, then you're gonna know there's never gonna be a season 3." And
I think the ending is confirmation he's in Man of Tomorrow.
Hopefully, because if this is the last we see of Peacemaker, that's gonna be a real bummer.
No, he's definitely. I think he's gonna play a major role in Man of Tomorrow.
I hope so.
You don't think so?
I mean, who knows? I think so. I think it's probably likely he will. I think it's pretty likely that this planet in conflict with Earth X or in conflict with the DCU is going to be the drive of Man of Tomorrow. But
also, the concept of that storyline is such a big budget thing. I think that's a movie. You're gonna have it be a movie, and depending on his role, it could essentially be a Peacemaker movie too.
yeah, to me, if I was gonna guess, I'd say the Salvation side of this thing is going to be where the movies go, and then maybe the Checkmate side is where the TV shows go. Like when you think about a crossover of small scale organizations and government groups and NGOs, that feels like something you could make a TV show out of, right? Follow one or two of these groups on their various exploits, and then the other half of the finale sets up the Salvation, which I feel like is where the movie's going to go. So this gives us a nice little double branch of where the TV side of the DCU might go, and also where the movie side of this might go.
Man of Tomorrow sets up Checkmate, because after that storyline, after he gets out of there or whatever, then you do Checkmate, and maybe we could even see a reality where there is no more Peacemaker, but he's part of the Checkmate show.
They also say it's either going to be an amazing, unforgettable universe or a massive fumble with a lot of missed chances and to expand the universe. That's how I feel about it. DC's been getting a few passes here. Like we had the DC EU that was trying so hard to make it work, and they just threw it all away and started over. So I feel like now they've got their shot. They're either going to land this or they're going to not land this, right? And this is James Gunn calling a shot, and I wish the episode was better because I don't feel that confident. I feel interested. I feel excited, but I don't necessarily feel super confident based on what we got here.
Did you think either of those after credit scenes topped the one last week?
Probably not, but Economos finally breaking one of his coworkers, I feel like it's pretty funny. And you wonder if that was scripted laughter or if she just couldn't not laugh anymore, right? Like they probably were going on for like 15 minutes of him trying to break them, and she finally broke them.
What was that? God, that was an incredible joke. He's like, yeah, the cop pulls the guy over and he says, let me look in the back. He says, do you have a permit for that? He's like, no, you need a permit for that, son. And then she just howling laughter. That might have been the best part of the entire episode.
That was really funny.
And we didn't talk about they brought back Otis. Otis showed up. Everyone's favorite character, Otis. He showed up to just be Otis.
That's one thing I like about James Gunn's universe is that characters can kind of just show up. Like there's not like a grand entrance necessarily for all these characters. Sometimes they're just sitting there, you know. And when you're gonna meet with the Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, I can't remember which one it is, but he's been in Superman. Now he's been in this. It feels like it makes sense. You don't got to be like, and here's the Secretary of State. Dun, 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 and he walks in. Of course, it's the same guy. You know, he's gonna be in everything.
Did you think that when she says to Sasha, I have someone I'd like you to meet, that it was going to be Enchantress for a second?
I was kind of hoping. I really was.
God, that would have been incredible.
Squad connective tissue, right? We got our Rick Flag Jr. Kind of bummed we didn't come back to him ever.
But, yeah, that was really disappointing to me. You have him in one scene, and then you're not going to... That's my problem with that world, is you bring in this world, but we're not going to explore how things are different. We are for one scene, for one episode, but then that's just it.
Yeah, I feel like they should have really committed to one or the other here. And spending so little time in Earth X, and then ultimately having Earth X not even matter at all in the finale.
Yeah,
I feel like not been there, and it wouldn't have changed the ending.
I feel like maybe he does have plans for Earth X, but maybe he's just not the greatest at writing television and setting things up and building things up. Maybe James Gunn is just made for film.
Yeah, we'll see, because I'm giving him a little bit of a pass for these first couple entries because he has a lot on his plate. He's juggling a lot to set up. And now he essentially has done all the setup, right? This gave us the entire platform of what his DCU is going to be. So no more excuses now. You have your layout. Let's run with it. Let's see what he's got. Anything else you want to talk about for the episode here?
No, I don't think so. I think we've covered everything.
I think we have as well. We went through just about an hour here on the finale. Some highs, a lot of lows, but it left us ultimately interested in what DC has going forward, right? So my expectations, maybe I almost said exactly what I was going to say. My expectations went from high to neutral. I'm not really disappointed. I'm just waiting to see what the future has, honestly. And yeah, I went into this season, especially after the first episode, being like, we're so back. James Gunn is so confident. I can't believe he's pulling this off. And I got to the end of the season and I said, I don't know if he's pulling this off. He's still confident. He's still got a lot going on. He's clearly has plans here, which is more than you can say about the other guys. But I'm not sure it's all gonna be juggled well, right? Like he tried to juggle a lot in this season, and I don't think he juggled it all. And I hope that doesn't have to be a problem going forward because he clearly has a lot going on. He's got lanterns going all over the place. He's got Argus. He's got Checkmate. He's got I keep wanting to call it the Savage Lands, but that's the Marvel version. He has this planet called Salvation. He's got a lot going on. I hope he can juggle it all. But those are my final thoughts. Do you have any final thoughts before we end it here?
No, I would say I would say this is a low point. Maybe the worst, probably the worst episode of the series. It's so weirdly structured. It's just things are just happening. Don't feel earned. It's just all over the place. But I am hopeful for the future. I think there's a lot of good things you could do. Mimicology says really hoping the zombie universe is deceased. Is that the name of a storyline?
Yeah, that's the name of a DC run where there's essentially it's a zombie horror kind of DC universe, and that's something that's exciting about the episode. He has all these literal open doors where James Gunn has talked infinitely about. I love the Elseworlds. Go ahead and make a crazy Superman movie. Go ahead and make a zombie movie. Go ahead and make whatever you want. I don't care about canon like that. And he's literally saying, go do a zombie movie. Go do a Deceased. Go do a Candied Imp movie. I want you to explore this multiverse like that. So I hope that he means that. And I hope that he can actually explore this in a creative way. And yeah, let's go do a Deceased movie. Let's go do an Earth X movie. Let's not just do a shot of this or a scene of this. Let's go all in. Let's make what they won't make on the other side and really embrace the multiverse, or just stop with it. We got to decide what we're doing here.
And it's interesting that happened just weeks after Marvel Zombies came out.
That is true. That's what I thought as I was watching it.
And Robert Kirkman and Michael Rooker.
Wow, a great crossover.
Yeah. They should get Robert Kirkman to write and be the showrunner of a Marvel Zombies limited series on HBO.
That would be really fun.
Yeah, it would.
All right, guys. I think we've covered this season extensively. Like I said, we have a lot going on here on the channel. It's horror season. There's a lot of horror stuff going on. But in terms of DC, we'll be back for Lanterns. I'm hoping we'll have a lot more TV coverage along because this season, I think, went pretty well. We had a lot of engagement, especially tonight. It was really fun talking to you guys. So if you want to see us cover more stuff, let us know in the comments if there's any TV shows coming up you guys are excited about because we'd love to know what you want us to cover week to week. We're in this tiny little drought of superhero stuff, but surely there's something else to watch that's not a superhero television show, right? So let us know in the comments what you thought. Subscribe if you like what we had going on here. Hit like if you liked us. If you didn't like us, eat peace, assholes.